Okay, welcome back to part 2. I'm going to talk a little bit about the research design elements, but the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to actually go through some of this manuscript and show you how I found choices to fill in these categories. So the key piece to know is that you are reviewing this literature. This is your data. There is no right answer to the research problem because you are aggregating data and studies to fit your research needs. The way we have worded the problem in this was specific to our needs and our study and our research design. So I'm going to walk through a little bit of some of these variables. The research problem. Now, this is actually one of the good things about reviewing a study that I've written, only because you will see how I was trained to be afraid of not stating the obvious research design in ways that your peer reviewer can find it easily. So fancy that. The topic sentence, the first sentence of the article, is a statement of the research problem. Despite increases in college enrollment among students from all backgrounds, completion rates remain stratified by race, ethnicity, and class. So I've put that into the annotated bibliography, but the way it's worded doesn't have to be the way it's worded in the article. You're going to develop a point of view on this. So perhaps, and you'll see later on in these videos, I might change what the author actually put and use my own words to describe it because it's my data for my review. I just wanted to show you that all of the elements are always here. They just might not be explicit in the way that they are in this article, which we went through the ringer with peer review on. And so this is one of the ways in which we used writing as a method to make sure that people understood our research design and therefore the article. So I'm going to get to key variables in the next section. But scholarship significance might be something that is also needed in your AERA proposals, and that's the contribution to the literature, right? So this study contributes an organizational perspective to the current literature on social capital and college preparation. If any of you understand that sentence entirely at this point, I would say maybe this is too easy a class for you. I'm not sure I understand that sentence, and I wrote it. So I have to really be clear and truthful with myself about what I am doing and what I am reviewing. What is an organizational perspective? What is social capital? What is college preparation? These are words that I learn along the way. They're not taught in any specific class, but it's my job to make sure I understand what I'm reading, whether that means I go to Google, to Wikipedia, or to some other scholarly source like my chair. That depends on you. At the same time, I wouldn't take it for granted that everybody else in the class is reading that sentence and being like, oh yeah, an organizational perspective. Totally know what that is. Again, this stuff is difficult to understand at the beginning. It gets easier over time. But being socialized into it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong if it's tedious and takes a tremendous amount of time. All right, I'm scrolling down a little further and I find, oh my goodness, an entire section on the theoretical framework, which is actually what your proposal is asking you for, a section on a theoretical framework. Again, what are theoretical frameworks? We are reading about them in the literature, in the textbook. At the same time, you've had an introduction to what they are based on 702. So finding out what they are might just be a matter of trial and error. If you did it wrong in this particular draft, then you have a chance to revise it later. It's not a big deal. Revisions are part of the territory. Social capital. What is it? Well, hopefully this article is reviewing it for me, which is the duty of the author, is to say, hey, you don't need to know what an organizational perspective is, because I'm going to just tell you, and not based on my opinion. I'm going to tell you based on what the literature already says. So again, you can see these these topic sentences helping the reader. In the field of education, social capital theory suggests that the resources students accrue for their relationships can support their educational attainment. Does that now make it clearer? It depends on where you're at. It may or it may not. Regardless, you do need to struggle to understand it if it doesn't make sense yet. You'll see other things in our literature review, like sentence structures that say across this body of work. Again, we tend to try, at least in this article, to use topic sentences that clue the reader in on what's coming next. And you'll see across this body of work, this finding holds true across secondary and post-secondary settings. Common across these studies is the assumption that, again, the idea is that we reviewed the literature not as a book report. This study says this, that study says that. We are taking the time so that the reader doesn't have to read all, in your case, 20 studies in order to understand and discern what you want them to discern. So the annotated bibliography just gives you a place to put the data so that you can start to compare and contrast it. Again, this is annotated in such a way that you'll start to see how at least this article can deconstruct. It is by no means this difficult or hard. In any other article, I just understand the article well enough to have annotated it for you. In the next videos, you'll hear a little bit more. And again, I invite you to take a look at the article itself and to see, yes, approach is here. We employ a descriptive and instrumental case study designed to describe this thing, this theoretical framework. At the same time, there are many ways to describe maybe just a case study is here. How detailed you want to get in your annotated bibliography is up to you. I like to keep as much data as possible because it allows me to make distinctions between case studies that are instrumental and potentially case studies that are extreme and other different sampling choices in case studies. Depending on what your review is for, you may want to highlight different things. That's the takeaway.